Welcome, dear listeners, to another bone-chilling episode of Unveiling Nightmares. I'm your host, C.A. Bainham, and today we have a special guest with us. Joined today by Tony Hayes from Paranormal Investigations UK. Thank you for coming on the show.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So, how did you become interested in paranormal investigations?
I've always had an interest in supernatural, paranormal since a child, really. And I think it wasn't till probably the mid-1980s I'd done my various degrees in physics and sciences, and then moved into government service. And then, because of the job that I did at the time, I was left to my own devices and looking for something to do. Yeah. I ventured into what was audio recordings, particularly as a musician. I play guitar. That's when I first came across the phenomenon known as electronic voice phenomena, EVP.
Yeah.
So that was around about 1986. And then as I start to look at this strange phenomena, I then branched out into other areas that this incorporates quite a wide range of topics within the paranormal or the supernatural.
Yeah. So explain how EVP works.
Well, electronic voice phenomena, it's been around for around about 100 years, ever since audio has been recorded from the old vinyl into 4-track tape recorders. And it's where you are able to control the environment. So, for example, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. I simply run a recorder. And it's not just voices, it's sounds as well that get recorded onto that media. And it stayed with us from the old vinyl to tape recorders to the digital age. They've always been there. And no one's really come up with any rational explanation why these are there. Some are intelligent. And some of the sounds you hear, it's almost as if you're listening to what you deem as residual energy. Are we listening to something from the past? As long as you're able to disclude such things as radio bleed, that type of thing. But a general 4-track recorder that doesn't have a microphone attached to it should not record in radio transmissions, for example. And it's something that it still excites me to this day. It's one of my favorite subjects is EVP. But the difficulty is when you take that into private investigations, you need a lot more experimental to take place rather than just keeping with the audio recorders. And the difficulty with the audio recorders is obviously if you move into an apartment somewhere in the middle of London, then the likelihood of capturing where you could say this is certainly EVP when you've got outside contamination is near impossible. So sometimes you're unable to use that type of method. You have to move into other areas of investigation.
Yeah. So what was your very first paranormal experience like?
I think most people that have investigated over a wide range of time, there's not many out there that actually genuinely have a paranormal event occur to them. You generally investigate other people for it. As far as myself is concerned, I've had really only one, maybe two, what I would consider to be profound experiences, which I could consider to have no rational explanation. Yeah. One of them was in a case, a poltergeist case in Somerset, when I was struck on the right top shoulder. Yeah. I was never been able to explain that one away, and I've had personal items that have been moved in front of witnesses where we've had no rational explanation how this can occur. I've never seen a ghost. I wouldn't even know how I would react to one if for example, Henry VIII manifested in front of me. Yeah. How would I react to that? And I don't think anyone really knows until it actually occurs to you. And the likelihood is you'll do what 99% of the population do. You'd run away, wouldn't you? So
yeah, that's right. Run away screaming.
yeah.
Okay, so tell me about your most memorable investigation.
We've done a number. The one that we're currently working at the moment now, which we're almost 12 months into this long-standing investigation in Essex, that has probably been the most exciting and baffling of the cases we've ever been involved with. I'm more into the longer investigation because there is a distinct difference between the ghost hunter who generally goes out a weekend into a supposedly haunted building and they're there for 5-6 hours, disappear. You may take various pieces of equipment such as an audio recorder, EMF meter, that type of thing, and then the following weekend they're off to somewhere else. Once you move into the investigation side, and particularly into parapsychology, that is generally the one where you're investigating a property, private residences as well as business establishments that are being affected by phenomena they can't explain, and your job is to go and investigate it and see if you can find answers to that. And some of these, our longest case has been 18 months. Others, they can be quite spontaneous and over and done within a matter of 6 to 12 weeks, but some are more long-standing. The cases are out there and they're still occurring to this day. The only reason why not many people know about them is because the intention is to keep them out the public domain. The last thing you want when you're investigating a high profile case is to have it leaked into the media, and then you've got that particular problem then to deal with. Fine after it's ended, but not during, So
yeah, I can understand that. I suppose it would be a lot to deal with if you had the media involved and you were dealing with the investigation as well.
Yeah, the media is, particularly in the area that we're in now, you only have to look at put into Google newspaper reports on paranormal, and there's literally hundreds of reports per day, and they turn it into some sort of entertainment when if you're a family experiencing this phenomena, it's far from hilarious. It is quite a problem for them. So yeah,
I suppose with all the films that have been coming out, like The Conjuring with Ed and Lorraine Warren, I suppose that doesn't help, does it really?
No, that's right. The great difficulty that we have, obviously, with things like The Conjuring 2, 90% of it is based on fantasy. There's very little fact in there because they're trying to sell the movie at the end of the day, and they generally sort of are not that too interested in the truthful side of it. I can't think of a single documentary or film that's based itself really on the actual truth side of it, because sometimes the truth is boring. What they want to do is sex it up and to be some sort of Conjuring 2. In the case of the Conjuring 2, the Warrens were actually only in Enfield for about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. That was it. The general unannounced visit, they walked around the building and then they disappeared. They turned the film into as if they were somehow responsible for the ending of the phenomenon. They certainly were not involved with that at all. So that's a Conjuring. Yeah.
I am a little bit interested in, I know it sounds a bit silly, but the film Annabelle, where the doll is possessed. Do you have things like that where there is a possession of certain objects?
Yes. There is some substance in the hypothesis that a object can carry some, people say it, the haunted object is there is some sort of evidence that provides, particularly, it doesn't necessarily have to be a doll. for example. I think in the case of the Annabelle doll, I don't buy into the Annabelle doll, mainly because of the Warrens' involvement with that. But there are certain items that appear to are left with some form of residual energy.
Yeah.
If you go to mediums where they'll use the psychometry side of it, of holding an object, and almost as if they psychically are able to read this object. It's something I've done in the past with medium courses. You go at the beginning when they're doing the courses, then you go at the end, you do various tests with them, and one of them I will take a number of objects. They don't know what they are, and I'm interested to see if they feel anything from it, if at all. And some of the results have been quite compelling, and they seem to have knowledge of an object they had no knowledge about, of its past history. So, I'm quite open-minded with that particular aspect of it on the we'll call it a haunted object because people understand what that means.
Yeah. How would you deal with that if you had an object like that?
That's an interesting question. For example, we've been dealing with a recent case of a poltergeist, and over 500 coins were reported into the building over a period of years. Them coins were put into a glass vase for safekeeping. I didn't want them anywhere near my house, to be honest. They're now in safe storage. I think it's impossible to investigate an object unless it actually glows in the dark or it gives off some form of energy. There's also the power of the suggestion. So, for example, if I was to give you, Crystal, here's a doll for you, this is known to be haunted. There are occasions when it's walked without batteries being fitted. I've introduced into you a suggestion that this item is haunted, therefore you may, through the PK psychological side, begin to manifest the phenomenon yourself. And it's just really on the power of suggestion rather than the object itself.
Yeah, okay. So what tools do you typically use during an investigation?
As in equipment?
Yes.
The first stage really isn't involved with equipment. It's actually down to data, statements, what is actually occurring. With investigation, you should never do what I call ambulance chasing. So, for example, I get an email today, someone says, my house is haunted, doors are opening on their own, there's bangs and knocks and so on. That's not the time to go in there. You've got to sit back and start to write down the data, get that logged down. So you generally know where you're going. And then the equipment you take does have some basis of being there. So what would be the point of taking, for example, an audio recorder into a building that isn't experiencing any unusual sounds? Likewise with such things as an EMF meter. If there's no energy in the property, what will be the point of taking it? So you've got to really decide in advance what equipment you need and what is it you're taking it in for. Videos, audio recorders, and there's other pieces of equipment which some are controversial. For example, the spirit box, which is the radio scanner. Likewise with apps, I'm deeply suspicious with apps where people will get this app, walk into a building, and it warns them there's a ghost flying about. Where's the evidence to support that? So I think it really depends what you're trying to accomplish. What you need to do is attempt to, if you can, that is to witness the phenomena firsthand. And you can only generally do that by good research. What age is the building? How long have the people been in the building before it started to happen? Because you do find clarification from case to case. So, for example, someone may get in contact with us and say, look, moved into my house and there's doors are banging. I can hear footsteps upstairs.
Yeah.
And all that type of stuff. You then ask the obvious question, when did you move in? We moved in 3 or 4 weeks ago. Well, we know with anyone that's moving into a property, you will hear noises you are not accustomed to. It takes you a while to adjust to the new sounds of the house. I live quite close to Manchester Airport. When friends come to visit me, they say, how do you put up with all them aircraft flying over? I don't actually hear them anymore. It disappears.
Yeah.
So the advice to any investigator is don't go down the road of the ambulance chasing. Research initially, because there are different levels of phenomena that gets reported to Crystal. For example, if someone was to say, I was sat at home and I saw the remote control of the TV move 3 foot across the coffee table.
Yeah.
Now, you may look at that and think, well, that can only be 2 things. It's either they're lying to me, fraud, or it is a genuine event. Or are there other reasons for it? For example, have they misrepresented that? Have they exaggerated the phenomena?
Yeah.
Have they over-reported it? Have they under-reported? There are many different aspects that you need to consider. But you do need a list of things when you arrive at the property with all your kit to know what you're going to do with it when you arrive there. Otherwise, you're going down a blind alley otherwise. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine if you're carrying a lot of equipment around and you don't actually need some of the things, it's going to be a lot, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, we probably got £16,000 worth of electronics these days. We don't do public events. We don't get involved with them at all. We generally just do private residences as well as business establishments. So you have to have the kit. If you're buying an EMF meter for £20 off eBay, then it's going to perform like a £20 EMF meter off eBay. It will give you false readings. So, for example, a common of the black EMF meter, you can pick them up for peanuts off eBay or Amazon. It will give you considerable amount of false negatives because it works on the frequency of between 20 and 20,000 hertz. So in other words, if you put that near a light switch or a mobile phone, I can guarantee you will get a trigger. It will flash its lights and start to alarm.
Yeah.
But other more intricate equipment designed for energy measurement has a much tighter control threshold on what it is that you're seeking. Because nobody really knows why people are suggesting that when you take an EMF meter into a building, you suddenly get spikes of energy.
Yeah.
A lot of people would interpret that as they've measured a ghost walking past, that type of thing. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And whatever evidence you get, how suggestive or controversial is it going to be? It's incredibly difficult, and I can't think over the hundreds of years that people investigated cases, there's such a thing is 100% proof of a paranormal incident.
Yeah.
I just don't think that they exist. We can get close to it, but there's always, often the frustration is there's always a rational explanation in there somewhere,
Yeah, there's never really been 100% proof, has there?
No.
So how do you tell the difference between a real paranormal activity and hoaxes?
A lot. It depends at the very early stages. I've been in doing this for 37 years now. Since 2016, we've investigated 675 requests for help. Some of them were just simple, down to pictures or video evidence, that type of thing. We're very quickly able to distinguish. Others you just get a gut feeling, to be honest with it, that often the clues are what is missing rather than what's being told to you. People can sometimes, as far as if they're deliberate, they are rare, Crystal. I'm not, they are rare for someone to deliberately attempt fraud.
Yeah.
Those that do, it can be anything from they're in a housing association property and they want you to tell the local authority that the house is haunted and they can move the family out. Others are looking for payment from the media, if it's newspapers or the TV. Others want you to write a book, want to give payment. Businesses, properties, in particular, pubs are one of them. They want you to go along and say, yeah, my pub is haunted, based on nothing really, on the basis of that they can sell an investigation to a paranormal group for £600 or £700 on a Saturday night. So it is in a way free money for them. But there's so often the clues are in what's missing, and you just have a gut feeling for it when you think, this is slightly different. And a lot is depending on the impression that a person makes to you. If you've got a 40-year-old female, it rings you up in complete utter bits because something quite dramatic has happened. She's got young children in the house, and there are no warning signs such as mental health or that type of thing. Then you do your best to try and help them, because when it does come calling, it's I can assure you it's not a pleasant experience, and you try to do your best for the family to find answers.
So when you've actually found someone that's not a hoax, like the family that you just mentioned, how would you help them? Sort of like, is it move the spirit on?
Yeah, I think it's only right that I cover the fact of the fraud is you have to consider it, but there's a difference between thinking it's fraud to knowing it's fraud. There's a distinct difference, and more than on a few occasions we've investigated cases where there's suspicions of fraud, because you have to attempt to remain totally, absolutely open-minded. It's once you actually move in then with the case, it's all based on, because there's no two cases the same.
Yeah.
You're trying to get into the dynamics of why this is occurring. What are the answers? Is someone with the close to the family member that's passed away recently? Is it because they've moved into the property? Is it because they're doing a heavy duty house refurbishment? Is another reason why phenomena appears to start spontaneously.
Yeah.
You have to get there early, because generally within 8 to 12 weeks, the phenomenon is going to flatline. It doesn't stay around for that long. So you need to get there as quickly as possible. But because we look at around about 150, 160 cases per year, we have to be quite selective of the ones that we have to put resources into, because more recently, Essex is 220 miles away from me. It's 230 miles away from my colleague. We travel at our own expense, spend 4 or 5 nights there. It's expensive. So we want to make sure that that time and effort is justified. And generally, we've never got it wrong when we've chosen to go into a property, because it's highly intrusive. Who wants a couple of strangers not walking about their property for a couple of days? But often when it does happen, when it does fracture, you're trying to get answers for the family. Unfortunately, we don't always come away with them. We don't have the answer. All we can say is something generally unusual is occurring, and now it's gone. Give us a shout next time if it does begin to start again, and we move on to the next case and see if we can learn anything else from that.
Yeah. Have you ever felt threatened or scared during one of your investigations?
Yes, this is where it comes. You mentioned about haunted objects. This is where the theory being an object's been associated with a property, taken away from the property, can show some forms of residual energy still attached to it.
Yeah.
It can certainly happen to a person. One of the things that we're looking at the moment is what they call contagion. This is where, particularly when you're dealing with highly active poltergeist cases, where the minute you become associated with it, it appears that it's almost as if it uses it like a switchboard and an exchange and tips into it. And I've had some utterly bizarre occurrences happen 200 miles away from a property. Certainly in the case, we did one in central Cheshire of an old drill hall. And when both of us left the following day, I got a phone call. A couple of friends have said, how are you feeling? I said, well, yeah, I'm okay. Why? Well, you were acting differently last night. You were a bit strange. And this also happened to a colleague. And that night was a strange one because I generally don't have, I'm not scared of this. If I was scared, I wouldn't get involved with it.
Yeah.
So I've been into darkened cellars on my own and slept in highly active rooms without a problem. I don't get fear. But both of us independently had a fear, which we couldn't understand. But it did pass after about 48 hours. We were both of us back to our old selves again. We found it unusual that one, we were acting differently without our even knowledge we were acting differently. And the other is that why did we feel a sensation of immense fear when we had nothing to be scared of? We don't know. We does that sort of answer your question on that one?
Yeah, that does. Okay, so what's the most compelling evidence of paranormal activity that you've ever captured?
Probably the one that we're investigating at the moment, because over the years we've evolved and we can use technology to our advantage.
Yeah.
So, for example, 2 decades ago, the only thing that we could actually do was to record what the clients tell us. So, last night at 10 o'clock, we heard bangs. We saw the light started to flicker or something else occurred. I was going to record it. It's still speculative. What we've been able to do over more recent times is introduce technology, particularly with the use of CCTV. So what we're able to do then is if an object suddenly appears out of nowhere, such as a ball falls from the ceiling, and there's absolutely nobody at all in the building, never mind in the room, captured on 4 CCTV cameras, that's compelling.
Yeah.
But other times we may just be faced with, I've found an unusual object on my living room floor. I don't know how it got there. So we are using technology, and I think where you use that to its advantage is it can then begin to give you better understanding of what's occurring. Because one of the CCTV in a case in Cheshire, was that, again, that was a business premises that was showing high levels of what seemed to be poltergeist behaviour, heavy objects just moving rather on a card. And we fitted, again, a series of CCTV cameras. So if you take inanimate objects, if we find something to explain, say this ball, getting like that ball. Now, if that ball is on a table and on camera, it suddenly moves and falls onto the floor. When it hits the floor, it's obviously going to make a sound because it's quite heavy.
Yeah.
where we were able to take it further is because we had this on camera, we were able to duplicate that event identically by just going to it and just getting the finger and just pushing the ball off and it fell on the floor. What was striking is when we analysed and about a dozen occasions of these objects just falling. When we analysed the audio, when the ball strikes the ground, the frequency of the ball, which we didn't know why it fell to the ground, was different. When we pushed it off, you had a much bigger spread of frequency.
Yeah.
But when the object fell off by means we don't understand, it was just like a pillar of frequency. And the theory now with this is that the object, if I'm a ghost and I come along and push the object and it falls, my job is over with when it falls. But it doesn't appear to be the case, because the ball itself seems to be, it's enveloped in like a glove. So when it strikes the floor, the frequency didn't expand outwards, and the reason why the frequency analysis is so different. So that then takes us into different territory, because what we can say, if a ghost comes along and moves an object, it's not using a physical hand. It hasn't got one. It has to be using some form of energy. Yeah. And if it does so, it appears that the energy is still around the object until some point it may well begin to dissipate. And when people have got objects, it happened. Are you familiar with the Enfield poltergeist in London?
Kind of.
Yeah, that's the Conjuring 2 story with Enfield. What they found, and so they were dealing with quite a number of what they call apports, objects that apport into property. When they pick them up, they were more often than not quite warm to the touch, certainly not as what is expected. Some have experienced objects being a lot colder, but the common one, and it's certainly the case of the poltergeist, the objects appear to be warm. Yeah. So that again fits in as we move forward from investigation to investigation, picking up a little bit of information, add it to what we already know, and it may well be at some point we'll be able to understand exactly what it is that's occurring here.
Yeah. I suppose that'd be technology in the future, wouldn't it, really? To get a better understanding.
Yeah, because certainly if we hadn't introduced technology into the Chester building, we wouldn't have been able to record these objects falling. They had heavy paintings. Why was it a heavy painting shot 12 foot across the room towards the male occupier? We don't have an explanation for that. But I think in the case of the objects that began to fall just so randomly, we were able to analyse capture through CCTV and then attempt the duplication to see why is it that this actually differs than what it would be if we did it ourselves. So, we are getting a little bit closer,
Yeah. So how do you deal with people who don't believe?
Don't believe?
Yeah.
We generally don't get involved with them, to be honest. I am an absolute hardwired Liverpool supporter. I would not go to Old Trafford watching Manchester United. So if I'm a sceptic, why on earth, and don't believe, why would I want to go to a paranormal event and say I don't believe? There's no skepticism comes with the territory. I am completely skeptical, but I much prefer the words open-minded. I generally will believe everything I'm told, or until my eyes and ears tell me differently. If you use that philosophy, you're fine. Everybody that you speak to, investigator, will say, "Do you believe?" And they will often say, "I'm skeptical." The fact is, they do actually believe. I believe in the survival hypothesis that the consciousness can survive bodily death. But it's not just about ghosts and spirits. You have to consider other aspects, such as near-death experiences, after-death communication, past lives, all these other topics of psychical research, which are always happening every day of the week. There's something occurring to try to take us closer to the understanding of. If people say, I think it's an unfair question for a skeptic, because if you're around in a dinner table, for example, and people say, what do you do for a living? And you say, I'm a paranormal investigator.
Yeah.
I can guarantee silence will follow. I told, I don't believe in ghosts and spirits. Well, I don't myself because I've never seen one.
Yeah.
But I do believe in the hypothesis of survival, and we are getting ever closer to it becoming a general fact, because it's you've got to understand the subject before you really have an opinion. You know, for someone to say to you, Crystal, for example, oh, I think it's a load of nonsense. UFO is a perfect example. I do not believe in UFOs. That's fine. You know, you've got your opinion, you carry on. But there are other people out there that generally believe in that possibility. I'm no UFO. I don't actually do UFOs at all. It's not my remit. But you know, the skepticism, it can be problematic. You get it with the internet. It's the reason why I generally don't ever give an opinion, you know, on YouTube channels or whatever, because the keyboard warrior is very much out there. I'm quite sure you've experienced this yourself, and it's not pleasant when it starts.
No.
There only just a few, but yeah.
So, have you got any advice for someone who would be interested in becoming a paranormal investigator?
Yes, once you've got the interest there, is join at least one of the mainstream organisations. One is called ASAP. I think it's called Association of Investigating Anomalous Phenomena. They're on Facebook, ASAP, ASSAP. Facebook, they have an active Facebook page there. Membership to ASAP is just £5 a year electronic, £20 a year if you want the magazines to come through your door. That will take you into an area of the like-minded investigators. Some psychical researchers there as well that can guide you through. They also have events that are occurring. They also have investigator training courses. One's coming up in November. It's an excellent association, and I would recommend that anywhere for low cost. Those that want to take it further is there's only one place to look, is the Society of Psychical Research, often named the SPR. More expensive, but they've been around for around 137 years. They've been going forever, and they, again, like ASAP, have regular webinars, as they call them, or podcasts. ASAP, in case of ASAP, they have one every Thursday. The SPR is less frequent, and it will begin to then to educate you, because everybody, Crystal, starts at the beginning. No one wakes up one day, oh, I'm a paranormal investigator. It doesn't work that way. And you just begin to speak to other like-minded. You can only do that. That's the beauty about the internet. It's a wonderful thing that's brought people closer together. There are the negative side of the internet, obviously, but particularly with a keyboard warrior. But generally, you know, you can sit at home, you can have communications with like-minded people. Be selective and just be careful of the politics. You know, it's probably sometimes unwise to express an opinion.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out today for me, Tony. It's been wonderful having you here. Stay tuned, dear listeners, for more spine-tingling tales and dark discussions in a world of extreme horror. Until next time, remember the nightmares are real, and here on Unveiling Nightmares, we're crafting nightmares one tale at a time.